Okay. Hello, hello. Don't tell me my audio is going to start acting up already. Come on. Okay. Go ahead and pop this over to share. Isn't that wonderful fireplace? Damn it, did it again. Okay. And of course, people are going to be streaming the same time as me. That's just part of the course. Okay, got my sharing done. Mute myself so I don't have to hear it. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to be recording tonight. So if I'm a little slow responding, that's because I'm focusing on the story or poems and what else not I'm going to be doing. I don't know if I'm going to try to do the entire book tonight or not. I'll see how far I get. Okay, I do have a record message that will pop up whenever I start recording. That's the message it'll do. So if I'm doing that, that means I started recording. The entirety of the stream, however, will be, posted to YouTube when I get done, and there'll be a separate playlist just for the stories. So let me go ahead and switch skins. Okay, there we go. Now we'll be reading the Irish Fairy and Folk Tales. This is a compilation that I'll admit now was done for Barnes & Noble by Fall River Press. I'm not going to be reading their introduction because there's no real reason to. But each of the different sections I will give the author's name, say like William Ellington, T. Crofton Coker, Lady Wilde, and such, along with the title of either the poem or the story. Yeah. And the fireplace is just, clearly for aesthetic, and I like the relaxing sound to it. Okay. Me. So I'm going to do one more share. Honestly, I don't know else I'm going to share this too. I don't like to go through Twitter to share it. Random singing happens all the time. Okay. No, that's not what it was. I really like this fireplace thing. It's incorporated into a picture or something. Oh well. Maybe if I get followers and viewers and such, I may do more. But for now, I just like doing this for the readings. Filipinos wanted to do story times now. Oh well. Anyway. Back to OSB. And we will be recording in 5, 4, 3, 2. The Fairies by William Allingham. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting, for fear of little men. Wee folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and grey cock's feather. Down along the rocky shore, some make their home, and live on crispy pancakes of yellow tide foam. Some in the reeds of the black mountain lake, with frogs for their watchdogs, all night awake. High on the hilltop, the old king sits. He's now so old and gray, he's nigh lost his wits. With a bridge of white mist, calm candle crosses. on his stately journeys from Silver League to bosses, or going up with music on cold starry nights to sup with the queen of the gay northern lights. They stole little Bridget for 7 years long. When she came down again, her friends were all gone. They took her lightly back between the night and tomorrow. They thought that she was fast asleep, but she was dead with sorrow. They have kept her ever since, deep within the lakes, on a bed of flagon leaves, watching till she wakes. By the craggy hillside, through the mossy bare, they have planted thorn trees, for pleasure here and there. Is any man so daring to dig up one in spite? He shall find the thornies set in his bed at night. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men. We folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jackets, red cap, and a grey cock's feather. That's kind of cool. I think I'd heard the whole poem before. I'm sure I mispronounced at least one word. And of course my computer was chirping the entire time because I did not shut off Discord. Please tell me that's not recording that. Of course, now that I'm watching, it's not going to do it again. I may have ticked off if I hear that in the playback. But, hey, scuff is scuff. Alright. No one is showing up that I've seen, so I guess I will just continue. The next one will be the priest's supper. Okay. Message is posted. I will start recording in 3, 2. The Priest's Supper by T. Crofton Croker. It is said by those who ought to understand such things that the good people, or the fairies, are some of the angels who were turned out of heaven, and who landed on their feet on this world, while the rest of their companions, who had more sin to sink them, went down further to the worst place. By this, as it may, there was a many troop of the fairies, dancing and playing all manner of wild pranks on a bright moonlight evening towards the end of September. The scene of their merriment was not far distant from Ichglea, in the west of the county Cork, a poor village, although it had a barrack of soldiers, and a great mountain and barren rocks like those around it are enough to strike poverty in any place. However, as the fairies can have everything they want for a wishing, poverty does not trouble them much, and all their care is to seek out unfrequented nooks and places where it is not likely one will come to spoil their sports. On a nice green sod by the river's side, there were little fellows dancing in a ring, gaily as can be, with their red caps wagging about in every bound in the moonshine. And light were these bounds, that the lobes of dew, although they trembled under their feet, were not disturbed by their capering. Thus did they carry on their gambols, spinning around and round, and twirling and bobbing, and diving and going through all manner of figures, until one of them chirped out, "Cease, cease with your drumming. Here's an end to our mumming. By my smell I can tell a priest this way is coming." And away every one of the fairies scampered off as hard as they could, concealing themselves under the green leaves of the lampshire, where if their little red caps should happen to peek, they would only look like the crimson bells, and more hid themselves in the shady sides of stones and brambles, and others under the bank of the river, and in holes and crannies in one kind of another. The fairy speaker was not mistaken, for along the road, which was within view of the river, came Father Horrigan on his pony, thinking to himself that it was just so late that he must end this journey from the first cabin he came to, and according to his determination, he stopped at the dwelling of Dermond Larry, lifted the latch, and entered with "My blessing on all here." I need not say that Father Horrigan was a welcome guest wherever he went, for no man was more pious or better loved in the country. Now it was a great trouble to Dermond that he had nothing to offer his reverence for supper, with a relish of potatoes, with which the old woman, for so Delisman called her wife, though she was not much past 20, had boiling in the pot over the fire. He thought of the net behind which he had set in the river, but it was... What's up? I really hate doing multiple takes. This print is a lot smaller than the Edgar Allan Poe book I was reading. Okay, let's try this again. And recording in 3, 2... The Priest's Supper by T. Crofton Croker. It is said by those who ought to understand such things that the good people, or the fairies, are some of the angels who were turned out of heaven and who landed on their feet in this world, while the rest of their companions, who had more sin to sink them, went down further to a worse place. This is as it may. There were a merry troop of fairies, dancing and playing all manner of wild pranks on a bright moonlit evening towards the end of September. The scene of their merriment was not far from the Ishgila, in the west of the county Cork, a poor village, although it had a barrack for soldiers, and great mountains and barren rock like those around it, are enough to strike poverty into any place. However, as the fairies have little... Let me turn off the monitor. Hold on. Okay, well, no. I can share. On a nice green sod by the river's side, where the little fellow was dancing in a ring, so gaily as may be, with their red caps wagging about at every bound in the moonshine, and so light were these bounds that the lobes of dew, although they trembled under their feet, were not disturbed by the capering. Thus did Mary on their gambols, spinning round and around, and twirling and bobbing, and diving and going through all manner of figures, until one of them chirped out, "Cease, cease with your drumming. Here's an end to our mumming. By my smell, I can tell a priest this way is coming." And away every one of the fairies scampered off as hard as they could, concealing themselves under the leaves of Flushmore, where if their little red caps should even peep out, they would only look like the crimson bells, and more hid themselves at the shady side of the stones and brambles, and others under the bank of the river, and in holes and crannies of one kind or another. This fairy speaker was not mistaken, for along the road, which was within view of the river, came Father Horrigan on his pony, thinking to himself as it was so late as he would make an end of his journey at the first cabin he came to. And according to his determination, he stopped at the dwelling of Dermond Leary, lifted the latch, and entered with "My blessing on all here." I need not say that Father Horrigan was welcome guest wherever he went, for no man was more pious or better beloved in the country. Now it was a great trouble to Dermond that he had nothing to offer his reverence for supper, or as a relish for the potatoes which the old woman, for so Dermond called his wife, though she was not much past 20, had down boiling in the pot over the fire. He thought of the net which he had set in the river, but as it had been only there a short time, the chances were against his finding a fish in it. No matter, thought Dermond. There could be no harm in stepping down to try, and maybe I want the fish for the priest's supper. That one will be there before me. Down to the riverside went Dermond, and he found in his net a fine salmon as ever jumped to the brightest waters of the spreading Lee. But as he was going to take it out, the net was pulled from him. He could not tell how or by whom. Away got the salmon, and went swimming across along the currents as gaily as if nothing had happened. Dermond looked sorrowfully at the wake which the fish left upon the water, shining like a line of silver in the moonlight. And then, with an angry motion of his right hand and a stamp of his foot, gave vent to his feelings by muttering, "May bitter bad luck attend you night and day for blackguard schemer of a salmon, wherever you go. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. If there's any shame in you to give me the slip after this fashion, and I'm not clear in my own mind, you'll come to no good. For some kind of evil thing or other helped you. Did I not feel it pull the net against me as strong as the devil himself?" "That's not true for you," said one of the little fairies, who had scampered off at the approach of the priest, coming up to Dermond Leary, with the whole throng of companions at his heels. "There was only 12 of us pulling against you." Dermond gazed on the tiny speaker with wonder, who continued, "Make yourself no way uneasy about the priest's supper, for if you will go back and ask him one question from us, there will be as fine a supper as ever was put the table spread before him in less than no time." "I'll have nothing at all to do with you," replied Dermond, in a tone of determination, and after a pause he added, "I'm much obliged to you for your offer, sir, but I know better than to sell myself to you or the like of you for supper. And more than that, I know Father Horrigan has more regard for my soul than to wish me to pledge it forever out regard to anything you could put before him. So there's an end to the matter." The little speaker, with a pertinacity not to be repulsed by Dermond's banner, continued, "Will you ask the priest one civil question for us?" Dermond considered for some time, and he was right in doing so, but he thought that no one could come to harm of asking a civil question. "I see no objection to do the same, gentlemen," said Dermond, "but I will have nothing in life to do with you or your supper, mind that." "Then," said the little speaking fairy, whilst the rest came crowding after him from all parts, "go and ask Father Horrigan to tell us whether our souls will be saved at the last day, like the souls of the good Christians. And if you wish us well, bring back word what he says without delay." Away went Dermond to his cabin, where he found potatoes thrown out on the table, and his good wife handing the biggest of them all, a beautiful laughing red apple, smoking like a hard-ridden horse on a frosty night, over to Father Horrigan. "Please, your reverence," said Dermond after some hesitation, "may I make bold to ask you your opinion?" "What may that be?" said Father Horrigan. "Why, then, begging your reverence's pardon for my freedom, it is, if the souls of the good people are to be saved on the last day." "Who bid you ask me that question, Leary?" said the priest, fixing his eyes upon him very sternly, which Dermond could not stand before at all. "I'll tell no lies about the matter, and nothing in life but the truth," said Dermond. "It was the good people themselves who sent me to ask you the question, and they are in thousands down by the bank of the river, waiting for me to get back with the answer." "Go back by all means," said the priest, "and tell them, if they want to know, to come here to me themselves, and I'll answer that with any other questions they are pleased to ask with the greatest pleasure of my life." Dermond accordingly returned to the fairies, who came swarming about him to hear what the priest had to say in reply, and Dermond spoke out among them like the bold man he was. But when they heard they must go to the priest, away they fled, some here, more there, and some this way and more that, whisking by poor Dermond so fast and in such numbers that he was quite bewildered. When he came to himself, which was not for a long time, he went back to his cabin and ate his dry potatoes along with Father Horrigan, who made quite light of the thing. But Dermond could not help thinking it a mighty hard case that his reverence, whose words had the power to banish the fairies at such a rate, should have no sort of relish to his supper, and that fine salmon he had met should have gotten away from him in such a manner. Oh, good Lord, that was hard to read. It's interesting to know that fairies are fallen angels who weren't bad enough to be sent to hell. Interesting concept. I would never really considered that, but hey, why not? Okay. No one has shown up yet. We've seen. It says that there are 2 active viewers. I mean, Mogomo and Shanoa. Cool. Anyone have any questions while I'm not recording? By all means, let me know. I'm watching chat between reading, so... Wait, why is my mouth... Okay. Yeah, just... Yep, reading, so... And... Nothing drama? Okay, well... No one's gonna say anything. I'll go ahead and get into the next one. So... Message is posted. Recording will start in 5, 4, 3, 2... The Changeling by Lady Wilde. A woman was one night laying awake while her husband slept, when the door suddenly opened and a tall, dark man entered, of fierce aspect, followed by an old hag with a child in her arms, a little misshapen, sickly-looking little thing. They both sat down by the fire to warm themselves, and after some time the man looked over at the cradle that stood beside the mother's bed with her boy in it, kept his eyes on it for several minutes. Then he rose, and when the mother saw him walking directly to the cradle, she fainted and knew no more. When she came to herself, she called to her husband and bade him light a candle, and when she did, the old hag in the corner rose up and once again blew it out. When he lit it a second time, it was blown out. The third time he lit the candle, when again it was blown out. A great pearl of laughter was heard in the darkness. On this the man grew terribly angry, and taking up the tongs, he made a blow for the hag, but she slipped away and struck him on the arm with a stick she held in her hand. Then he grew more furious, and beat her on the head until she roared, when he pushed her outside and locked the door. After this he lit the candle in peace, but when he looked at the cradle, lo, in the place of the beautiful boy, a hideous little creature, all covered with hair, lay grinning at them. Great was their grief and lamentation, and both the man and his wife wept and wailed aloud for the loss of their child, and the cry for the sorrow was bitter to hear. Just then the door suddenly opened, and a young woman came in, with a scarlet handkerchief wound around her head. "What are you crying for?" she said, "at this time of night when everyone should be asleep?" "Look at the child in this cradle," answered the man, "and you shall cease to wonder why we mourn and we are sad." And he told her all the story. When the young woman went over to the cradle and looked at the child, she laughed, but said nothing. "Your laughter is stranger than our tears," said the man. "Why do you laugh at the face of our sorrows?" "Because," she said, "this is my child that is stolen from me tonight. For I am one of the fair race. My people who live under the fort on the hill thought your boy was a fine child, so they changed the babies in the cradle. But after all, I would rather have my own, ugly as he is, than a mortal child in the world. So now I'll tell you how to get your own son back, and I'll take away mine at once. Go to the old fort on the hill when the moon is full, and take with you 3 sheaves of corn and some fire. and burn them one after the other. When the last sheaf is burning, an old man will come up through the smoke, and he will ask you what it is you desire. Then tell him you must have your child back, or you will burn down the fort and leave no dwelling place for his people on the hill. Now the fairies cannot stand against the power of fire, and they will give you back your child at the mere threat of burning the fort. But mind, take good care of him after, and tie a nail from a horseshoe around his neck, and then he will be safe. With that, the young woman took up the ugly little imp from the cradle in her arms, and was away before they could see how she got out of the house. The next night, when the moon was full, the man went to the old fort with 3 sheaves of corn and fire. He burned them one after the other. As the second one was lighted, there came up an old man who asked him what his desire. "I must have my child again that was stolen," he answered. "I'll burn down every tree on the hill and not leave you a stone of the fort where you can shelter any more of your fairy kindred." Then the old man vanished, and there was a great silence, but no one appeared. On this the father grew angry, and he called out in a loud voice, "I'm lifting the 3rd sheaf now, and I'll burn and destroy and make desolate your dwelling place if my child is not returned." Then a great tumult and clamor was heard from the fort, and a voice said, "Let it be. The power of the fire is too strong for us. Bring forth the child." And presently the old man appeared, carrying the child in his arms. "Take him," he said. "By the spell of the fire and the corn you have conquered. But take my advice. Draw a circle of fire with a hot coal this night around the cradle when you get home, and the fairy power cannot touch him any more. And my reason of the fire." So the man did as he desired, and by the spell of fire and of the corn the child was saved from evil, and he grew and prospered, and the old fort stands to this day safe from harm, for the man wouldn't allow no hand to move a stone or harm the trees. And the fairies still dance there on the rath when the moon is full, to the music of the fairy pipes, and no one hinders them. That was the chain of things I've done. 3 stories so far. Anyone here? Anyone listening? Anyone care? Yeah, well. I still don't know if it's getting that stupid sound from Discord. shown up yet. Not sure what I'd do if it did, honestly. Okay. Next one's gonna be Lady Dolores. Taken by Croaker. Sound cute. That's not what I wanted. I want commercials to pop up on my audio feed from the fireplace. I really don't know if the stupid deletes are going to be showing up on my audio. Anyway. Let's start recording. 3, 2. The Lady of Gotherus by T. Crofton Croaker. On the shore of Smerrick Harbor, one fine summer morning, just at daybreak, stood Dick Fitzgerald, shallowing the Dean, which may be translated, smoking his pipe. The sun was gradually rising behind the lofty Brandon, and the dark sea was getting green in the light, and the mist clearing away. All of the valleys went rolling and crowing like the smoke from the corner of Dick's mouth. "'Tis just the pattern of a pretty morning," said Dick, taking his pipe from between his lips and looking toward the distant ocean, which lay as still and tranquil as a tomb of polished marble. "Well, to be sure," continued he, after a pause, "'tis mighty lonesome to be talking to oneself by the way of company, and not to have another soul to answer one. Nothing but the child of one's own voice, the echo. I know this, that if I had the luck, or maybe the misfortune," said Dick, with a melancholy smile, "to have the woman, it would be not the way with me. And what a wide world is a man without a wife. Is no more surely a bottle without a drop to drink of it, or dancing without music, or the left leg of a scissor, or the fishing line without a hook, or any other matter that is no way complete. Is it not so?" said Dick Fitzgerald, casting his eyes towards the rock upon the strand, which, though it could not speak, stood up as firm and looked as bold as ever Carrie witness did. But what was his astonishment at beholding, just at the foot of the rock, a beautiful young creature combing her hair, which was the sea-green color, and now the salt water shimmering on it appeared in the morning light like melted butter upon cabbage. Dick guessed at once that she was a Merrow, although he had not seen one before, for he spied the Golden Ruth, or the enchanted cap, which the sea people used for diving down into the ocean, lying upon the ground near her. And he had heard that if once he could possess himself one of the cap, she would lose the power of going away into the water. So he seized it with all speed, and she, hearing the noise, turned her head about as natural as any Christian. When the Merle saw that her little diving cap was gone, the salt tears, deathly salt, no doubt, from her, came trickling down her cheeks, and she began a low mournful cry with just the tender voice of a newborn infant. Dick, although he knew enough that she was crying for, determined to keep the Colandreath, let her cry never so much, to see what luck would come of it. Yet he could not help pitying her, and when the dumb thing looked at his face, her cheeks all moist with tears, 'twas enough to make anyone feel let alone Dick, who was ever and always, like most of his countrymen, a mighty tender heart of his own. "Don't cry, my darling," said Dick Fitzgerald, but the Merrow, like any bold child, only cried more at that. Dick sat himself down by her side and took hold of her hand, by way of comforting her. 'Twas no particular and ugly hand, only there was a small web between the fingers, as there is in a duck's foot, but 'twas as thin and as white as the skin between egg and shell. "What's your name, my darling?" says Dick, thinking to make conversation with him. But he got no answer, and he was certain sure now, either that she could not speak or did not understand him. He therefore squeezed her hand, and in the only way he had of talking to her. It's a universal language, and there's not a woman in the world, be fish or lady, that does not understand it. The Merrow did not seem displeased at his mode of conversation, and, making an end of her whining all at once, "Man," said she, looking up at Dick Fitzgerald's face, "Man, will you eat me?" "But all the red petticoats and the check aprons between Dingle and Trally," cried Dick, jumping up in amazement. "I'd as soon eat myself, my jewel. Is it I eat you, my pet? No, 'twas some ugly, ill-looking thief of a fish put that notion into your own pretty head, with the nice green hair down upon it, that is so cleanly combed out this morning." "Man," said the Merrow, "what will you do with me if you won't eat me?" Dick's thoughts were running on the wife he saw at the first glimpse, and she was handsome, but since she spoke, and spoke too like any real woman, he was fairly in love with her. 'Twas the neat way she called him man that settled the matter entirely. "Fish," says Dick, trying to speak her after his own short fashion. "Fish," says he, "here's my word, fresh and fasting. For you this blessed morning I'll make you Mistress Fitzgerald before all the world. That's what I'll do." "Never say that word twice," says she. "I'm ready and willing to be yours, Mr. Fitzgerald, but stop, if you please, till I twist up my hair." It was some time before she had settled upon entirely to her liking, for she guessed, I suppose, that she was going among strangers, where she would be looked at. When that was done, the Merrow put the comb in her pocket, and then bent down her head and whispered some words to the water that was close to the foot of the rock. Dick saw the murmur of the words upon the top of the sea, going out towards the wide ocean, just like a breath of wind rippling along, and says he, in great wonder, "Is it speaking you are, my darling, to the salt water?" "It's nothing else," she says, quite carelessly. "I'm just sending word home to my father not to be waiting breakfast with me, just to keep him from being uneasy in his mind." "And who's your father, my duck?" said Dick. "What?" said the Merrow. "Did you never hear of my father? He's the king of the waves, to be sure." "And yourself, then, is the real king's daughter?" said Dick, opening his two eyes to make a full, true survey of his wife that was to be. Oh, I'm nothing but a made man with you, and the king, your father. But to be sure, he has all the money that's down in the bottom of the sea. Money, repeated the Morrow. What's money? 'Tis no bad thing to have when one wants it, replied Dick. And may be now the fishes have the understanding to bring up whatever you bid them. Oh, yes, said the Merrow. They bring me what I want. To speak the truth, then, said Dick, 'tis a straw bed I have at home for you, that I am thinking in no fitting way as a king's daughter, so if 'twas not be displeasing to you just to mention a nice feather bed with a pair of new blankets. But what am I talking about? Maybe you have not such things as beds under water. By all means, she said, Mr. Fitzgerald, plenty of beds at your service. I have 14 oyster beds of my own, not to mention one just planting for the rearing of young ones. You have, says Dick, scratching his head and looking a bit puzzled. 'Tis a feather bed I was speaking of. Clearly yours is a very cut and decent plan. To have bed and supper so handy to each other, that person when they have to need one never need to ask for another. However, bed or no bed, money or no money, Dick Fitzgerald determined to marry the Morrow, and the Morrow had given her consent. Away they went before the strand, from Gulleris to Bowen running, where Father Fitzgibbons happened to be that morning. There are 2 words in this bargain, Dick Fitzgerald, said his reverence, looking mighty glum, and it is a fishy woman you'd marry. The Lord preserve us. Send the scaly creature home to her own people. That's my advice to you, wherever she came from. Dick had the golden druth in his hand, and was about to give it back to the Merrow, who looked covetously at it. But then he thought for a moment and said, then says he, Please, your reverence, she's a king's daughter. She was the daughter of 50 kings, said Father Fitzgibbons. I tell you, you can't marry her, she being a fish. Please, your reverence, said Dick again, in an undertone. She is as mild and beautiful as the moon. If she was as mild as beautiful as the sun, moon, and the stars all put together, I tell you, Dick Fitzgerald, said the priest, stamping his right foot, you cannot marry her, she being a fish. But she has all the gold that's down in the sea, only for the asking. I'm a made man if I'd marry her, and, said Dick, looking up silly, I can make it worth your while if anyone's to do the job. Oh, that alters the case entirely, replied the priest. Why, there's some reason now in what you say. Why didn't you tell me this before? Marry her by all means if she was 10 times a fish. Money, you know, is not to be refused in these bad times, and I may as well have of it as another. That maybe would take half the pains of counseling you that I've done. So Father Fitzgibbon married Dick Fitzgerald to the Merrow, and like any loving couple, they returned to Gulleris well pleased with each other. Everything prospered with Dick. He was the sunny side of the world. The Merrow made the best of wives, and they lived together with the greatest contentment. It was wonderful to see, considering where she had been brought up, how she would busy herself about the house, and how she was nurse the children, and for the end of 3 years, there were as many young Fitzgerald, 2 boys and a girl. In short, Dick was a happy man, and so he might have continued to the end of his days if he had only the sense to take proper care of what he had got. Many another man, however, beside Dick, had not the wit to do enough. One day, when Dick was obliged to go to Trally, he left his wife, minding the children at the home after him, thinking she had plenty to do without disturbing his fishing tackle. Dick was no sooner gone than Mrs. Fitzgerald set about cleaning up the house and glancing to pull down his fishing nets. But what should she find behind the hole in the wall but her own Hemidrulus? She took it out and looked at it, and then she thought of her father king and the mother the queen and her brothers and sisters, and she felt a longing to go back to them. She sat down on a little stool and thought over the happy days she had spent under the sea, and when she looked at her children and thought of the love and affection of poor Dick, and how it would break his heart to lose her. But, says she, you won't lose me entirely, for I'll come back to see him again. And who can blame me for going to see my father and mother after being so long away from them? She got up and went towards the door, but came back again to look once more at the child that was sleeping still in the cradle. She kissed it gently, and as she kissed it, a tear trembled for an instant on her eye and fell to its rosy cheek. She wiped away the tear, turning to the eldest little girl, and told her to take good care of her brothers and to be a good child herself until she came back. The Merrow then went down to the strand. The sea was lying calm and smooth, just heaving, glittering in the sun, and she thought she heard a faint, sweet singing, inviting her to come down. All her old ideas and feelings were flooding back over her mind. Dick and her children, the instant forgotten, and placing the cooling bean on her head, she plunged in. Dick came home in the evening, missing his wife. Yes, Kathleen, the little girl. What had become of her mother, and she could not tell him. Then he inquired of the neighbors, and he learned that she was seen going towards the strand with a strange-looking thing, like a cocked hat in her hand. He returned to his cabin to search for the clothing Druith. It was gone, and the truth flashed upon him. Year after year did Dick Fitzgerald wait expectantly for the return for his wife, but he never saw her more. Dick never married again, and was thinking that the Merrow would sooner or later return to him, and nothing could persuade him that her father, the king, kept her below force. For, said Dick, she surely would have not given up her husband and her children. While she was with him, she was a good wife in every respect. To this day, she is spoken of in tradition of the country with a pattern of one under the name of the Lady Gullers. Well, it's been an hour of me reading, sort of. An hour anyway. Excuse me. No, that was a 10-page one. It felt like it was taking longer. Okay. No one's coming in. I will do one more. Oh. fair, Sal's fair. Just going to read one more. I guess the one that comes after this one is considerably longer. Looks like a lot of them get longer after this. Okay. So, I guess this will be the fifth and final for tonight. Just 30 pages of reading is a good thing. Okay. Down here. Message up. Ouch. The next one is Pat Diver's Ordeal. So I will begin recording. Hello. And 3, 2. Pat's Diver's Ordeal. Alasisa McClintock. Pat's Diver, the tinker, was a man well accustomed to the wandering life and to strange shelters. He had shared a beggar's blanket in the smoky cabins. He had crouched beside the still in many a nook and corner. Still, poutine was made on the wild Inishwan mountains. He had even slept upon the barren heather in the ditch, with no roof over him but the vault of the heavens. And yet all his nights of adventure came to a commonplace when compared to one especial night. During the day preceding that night, he had mended all the kettles and saucepans in Mulville and Greencastle, and was on his way to Coldaf when night overtook him on the lonely mountain road. He knocked at one door after another, asking for a night's lodging, while he jingled his halfpence in the waistcoat pocket, but everywhere refused. Where he was the boasted hospitality of Innisfrowne, which he had never before known to fail. It was no use to be able to pay when people seemed so curlish. Thus thinking, he made his way towards a light a little further on, and knocked at another cabin door. An old man and woman were seated one each side of the fire. "Will you be pleased to give a night's lodging, sir?" asked Pat respectfully. "Can you tell a story?" returned the old man. "No, then, sir, I cannot say I'm a good storyteller," replied the puzzled tinker. "Then you maun just gang further, for none but them that can tell a good story can get in here." This reply was made in so decided a tone that Pat did not attempt to repeat his appeal, but turned away reluctantly to resume his weary journey. "A story indeed," muttered he. "Old wise fables to please the weans." As he took up his bundle of tinkering implements, he observed the barn standing rather behind the dwelling house, and aided by the rising moon, he made his way towards it. It was a clean, roomy barn, with a piled-up heap of straw in one corner. There was a shelter not to be despised. So Pat crept under the straw and soon fell asleep. He could not have slept very long when he was awakened to the tramping of feet and the peeping cautiously through the crevice of the straw covering. He saw 4 immensely tall men enter the barn. dragging a body which they threw roughly upon the floor. They next lighted the fire in the middle of the barn, and fastened the corpse by the feet with a great rope to a beam in the roof. One of them began to turn it slowly before the fire. "Come on," said he, addressing a gigantic fellow, the tallest of the four. "I'm tired. You be the talk your turn." "Faix an' troth, you'll no turn him," replied the big man. "There's Pat Driver under the straw. Why wouldn't ask your turn?" With hideous clamor the foreman called the wretched Pat, who, seeing there was no escape, thought it was wisest to come forth from hidden. "Now, Pat," they said, "you'll turn the corpse, but if you let him burn, you'll be tied up there and roasted in his place." Pat's hair stood on end, and a cold perspiration poured out of his forehead. There was nothing for it but to perform this dreadful task. Seeing him fairly embarked in all, the tall men went away. Soon, however, the flame rose so high as to singe the rope, and the corpse fell with great thud upon the fire, scattering the ashes and embers, and extracting a howl of anguish from the miserable cook, who rushed to the door and ran for his life. He ran until he was ready to drop of fatigue, when, seeing a drain overgrown with tall, rank grass, he thought he would creep in there and lie hidden until morning. But he had not been many minutes in the drain before he heard the heavy trampling again, and four men came up from the burden which they laid down on the edge of the drain. "I'm tired," said one to the giant. "It's your turn to carry him for a piece now." "Faix an' troth, I'll no carry him," replied he. But there's Pat Driver in the drain. Why wouldn't he come and take his turn?" "Come out, Pat, come out," roared all the men, and Pat, almost dead with fright, crept out. He staggered on under the weight of the corpse until he reached Killtown Abbey, a ruin festooned with ivy, where the brown owl hooted all night long, and the forgotten dead slept around the walls, under dense, matted tangles of brambles and bindweed. No one ever buried there now, but Pat's tall companions turned into the wild graveyard and began to dig a grave. Pat, seeing them thus engaged, thought he might once more try to escape, and climbed up on a hawthorn tree in the fence, hoping to be hidden by the browse. "I'm tired," said the man who was digging the grave. "Here, take the spade," addressing the big man. "It's your turn." "Faith and troth, it's not my turn," replied he. "There's Pat Driver in the tree. Why wouldn't he come down and take his turn?" Pat came down to take the spade, and just then all the cocks in the little farmyards and cabins around the abbeys began to crow. The men looked at one another. "We must go," they said. "And well it is for you, Pat Driver," the cocks crowed. "For if they had not, you'd just be bundled into the grave with the corpse." 2 months passed, and Pat had wandered far and wide over the county dongle. Then he glanced at the Rive Repon during a fair. Among the crowd that filled the diamond, he came suddenly upon the big man. "How are you, Pat Driver?" he said, bending down to look at the tinker's face. "You've the advantage of me, sir. I have not the pleasure of knowing you." "Do you not know me, Pat? Whisper. When you go back to Ishenden, you'll have a story to tell." Oy. Okay, that's 5 stories. Now it's 4 stories of a poem. Again, I'll be really ticked off if I hear this stupid chirping of Discord Messenger when I listen to the playback on these. Then I'll just have to record them while not streaming. Seeing as I have to have Discord open to get the PNG to work properly. I don't know. Anyway, Cubs. I wasn't really sure how long I'd be on to record tonight. What is today? Today's Thursday because it's St. Patrick's Day. Which was admittedly the inspiration behind the stream. Just one more book for me to read. Ugh. I don't know if I can get away with getting another bottle of wine to drink for tomorrow's stream. But I don't have any plans on canceling my Friday night fairy tales. I just wanted to add Irish fairy tales because of St. Patrick's Day. And, well, the next one in the book is the Puka, and it's in the 30-page range. Everything I've read tonight, I think the longest one's been 10, maybe. Yeah. Lots of people seem to be just chatting right now. I think I may read the poem again and clip it. What do you think, chat? Oh, chat that does not exist. That's right. Showing up on OSB if you exist. I was chatting in Throne. Not Throne. Yeah, I'm gonna carry on. Cherry the wolf mom. Wolf goddess that she is. Nope, she's not. No, I'm gonna read the poem again. I'm not gonna record it, I'm just gonna there were streams and shits and giggles because I kinda like the poem. It'll sound better this time. Unlikely. But I'm going to go ahead and hit record again anyway. The Fairies by William Allingham. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go hunting for fear of little men. We folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and a grey cock's feather. Down along the rocky shore, some make their homes. They live on crispy pancakes of yellow tide foam. Some in the reeds on the black mountain lake, with frogs for their watchdogs, all night awake. High on the hilltop, the old king sits. He's now old and gray. He's nigh lost his wits. On a bridge of white mist, calm kiln he crosses, on his stately journeys to league the bosses. Are going up with music on cold starry nights to sup with the queen of the gay northern lights. They stole little Bridget for 7 years long. When she came home again, her friends were all gone. They took her lightly back between the night and morrow. They thought that she was fast asleep, but she was dead with sorrow. They have kept her ever since, down within the lakes, on a bag of flagon leaves, watching till she wakes. On the craggy hillside, through the mosses bare, they have planted thorn trees, with pleasure here and there. Is any man so daring to dig up one in spite, he shall find the thornies sitting in his bed at night. Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go hunting for fear of little men. We folk, good folk, trooping all together, green jacket, red cap, and a grey cock's feather. Nice. Gotta like those grey cock feathers. Okay, thank you everyone for existing. I wish we could hang out more, but since we are no longer wishing, everyone out the door. Good night to all you Twitchers. Thank you for my stream. If you did enjoy it, follow and come again. Yeah, I really shouldn't sing. Don't really see anyone to raid. That's really benefit from me raiding them. What? Hell? No. No one here. Okay, well. Guess I will play the clicking game. Good night, everybody. Sleep well.